anything to do with payroll's obviously got lots of information about your employees in there, and it's all in the one spot, right? It's a whole bunch of information about all of your staff, all in the one sort of bit of software. The hard thing too, though, is it can get really technical. So when people start going down the security route, it's a very technical conversation. Some stuff I understand, but I only know the tip of the iceberg stuff. That's where we've got someone like Rolf. But yeah, I mean, understanding security at my level is certainly very complicated, but I think it's one of those must-haves, I suppose.
Yeah.
So.
Rolf, why don't you just introduce yourself to the crew and you said a little bit about your background and what led you here.
Yeah, excellent. So hi everyone, I'm the Regional Technology Director for APAC. So I also look after our global infrastructure operations as well. So essentially look after our data centers that we have around the world, all the applications, the infrastructure that sits on there, and then ensuring that everything is secure, compliant, and we've got the highest availability. So my background is I've been at Microsoft, I've been at Amazon, I've been at Dell, I've been a CTO for a global software company, and I'm at Access today.
Lovely. So lucky to have you. Next week, as we keep promoting, is a good session, is a important session for HR. We're going to go through employee experience. So some of the things that Michelle has been talking about, we're going to bring them to life from an employee's perspective and a HR perspective, and how that's going to help your HR team. So please, we're going to be promoting this to your HR teams directly, but please send this invite across to your HR leaders. I think it's really going to help them to understand the value of what we're bringing across, bringing to you with MicrOpay Evo. All right. So the way we're going to do this today is we're going to do it as a fireside chat. So I'm going to split the two personas up in a second, and then I'm going to start asking them a few questions. And what will come out of it, hopefully, is just a bit of conversation around these topics that we believe are going to be of value to you. So if you have any other questions, obviously, what you could do is put them in the chat. These sessions are meant to be short, sharp, sessions, but we will try to get to your questions as soon as we can. If we don't answer your specific question, don't stress. We will get back to you after the session to answer those. All right. So as I said, I'm going to split this into two sections. Anthony's going to be our payroll professional, our payroll persona. He's been in payroll.
I'm not sure what's professional, but
I don't know how long you've been in payroll for, mate, but it's just too long. Like everybody knows you. It's like, oh my God. Anthony in payroll. I don't know if that's had it. Never mind. So yeah, Anthony's going to be our voice of payroll, and of course Rolf's going to be our tech, and hopefully those images aren't offending anybody.
We've gone past the pencil, though. I think the guy who holds the pencil. We've moved a little bit. We've moved past the pencil.
Yeah, atypical payroll person or IT person anyway. So obviously, I have these slides in here as a reference point. We won't go into too much detail, but again, we want to make sure we bring the benefits of AI, but do it in a secure way. And that's what we'll dive in today, right? So it needs to be in a responsible way, and that's the important thing. And even what we'll talk about is what we do here internally at Access to make sure it's responsible for our business, right? All right. So actually, what I might do is that's a Rolf slide, so he's going to go into that slide there. Might go back a step, and let's start with payroll. And Anthony, first question for you. All right. So why or what should we be aware of security in payroll when it comes to AI? So put your hat on and say I'm the payroll officer or administrator or manager. Yeah,
and I think there's the really obvious thing initially is that obviously your payroll system has a lot of data in there, and it's very confidential data. So things from TFNs, names and addresses, birth dates, the whole thing. So there's obviously more than enough data in a payroll system to be, if it was misused, would create a lot of havoc, I suppose. It wouldn't be a good thing if that data leaked or went anywhere. And that's where, if we are then using AI and you're connecting that data to your payroll data, those two things need to be just as secure. in how that's being used. So obviously Evo does that. It's actually connecting an AI tool into your payroll database. So when you're thinking about that connection and what that's doing, it's really critically important that that data doesn't go anywhere and it's not being leaked into any sort of website or anything other than just specifically for the use of the business. So that's probably the fundamental. I think that's probably quite obvious. I think people would be aware of that.
Let me expand on that, right? So it's interesting what you say about, being available outside of the business, right? So, we hear a lot about ChatGPT and, it seems like there's thousands of AI products. I mean, I hear about new ones coming up every day, right? Seems like it's the new trend of how many AI products can come up every day. It's like, let's have a competition, right?
Well, they're everywhere too, right? Like, I mean, there's an AI even in Adobe Acrobat Reader or something. Like I haven't used that one, but there's some sort of AI in just your Adobe PDF viewer or something,
Yeah, and I had one pop up in PowerPoint when I was, in this series doing the slides. Would you like me to do this, and this? I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So, look, I mean, I take us on a bit of a journey around that. I mean, all these different ones, and what you're seeing, has this come back to producing things like approved tools or, codes of conduct, or like, how do we make sure we ring fence this? Maybe, I don't know, is that the right term? How do we ring fence this in a business so that it doesn't get out of control?
I think it's interesting because there's obviously 1,000 AI products now, right? And like we said, there's ones that are showing up in just a PDF reader. They're embedded in almost anything, and you don't even realize they're getting into the product. But the important thing is that if you are using those products, you need to know how they treat data. So you don't know, like I don't know what Adobe does. I don't know. I'm not saying Adobe's not a secure product, but you're not really sure if you start just involving your data, which could be payroll data. It could be that you've printed out a PDF report from MicrOpay, which has all your payroll data in there, and you've opened it up in something that has an AI tool. Well, how is that AI tool then treating that information? Is it farming it anywhere? Is it going anywhere? Like, what's happening with that data? And the hard thing is that they're very discrete AI tools everywhere now, and you probably don't even realize that you're interacting with them. And so that's where you can get caught out, unbeknown to yourself, that that's actually happening. And that's where things can get like it's changed so quickly, the use of AI, that it's you're not even sure that you're necessarily interacting with it yourself at that point. And actually, Stephen, we had the session yesterday with our services team that showed us what we're doing in our digital assistant, right? So our digital assistant now has an embedded AI feature, and when people ask us questions on MicroPay, they have the option to use that digital assistant to help get articles and data from our knowledge base. So that's pointing toward their knowledge base. So there could be situations where you're using AI, you're not even sure that you're using it, not even realizing that you're using it because you're interacting with a website or a help desk or something. And the thing about that then is that you need to be aware of what you're using, because if you are then putting data into those systems, you need to be conscious of what data that is, because you don't want that data to be things like a first name, surname, a date of birth, and other personal information.
It's interesting because, and this is just this is completely I hadn't thought about this until you sort of mentioned those things. We here at Access actually take it very seriously. We all have to go through this code of conduct and security training we go through, right? And all of us had to sign up for an AI one recently. It all had to be done as part of this, or even us having these discussions, right? Yeah, and probably led by this guy in the middle. No, but part of it was within the code of conduct was like, what's authorized, and the reasons why you wouldn't do it. To your point, Anthony, there might be something out there that's just unbeknownst to you. It's sort of listening. I'll say listening to what you're saying or putting on paper or whatever you're doing, right? It's there in the background, and I think what I would probably recommend, saying this without notice, is that things like having approved AI tools, right? Talking to the business and saying, to the IT guys and saying, what can we do to have approved tools? So if you were to approve MicrOpay Evo, because we've had this discussions like these and you approve it, then the confidence level, I guess, goes up across the business, right? As opposed to, well, I'm just using this, I hope that's okay. Like, hope nobody minds, right? You know what I mean? So,
and the thing, like, Yeah, Rolf will probably be able to give this a bit more color. But if you just
Yeah,
decide to upload a PDF report into something like ChatGPT, I mean, what's your
That's what
chance
made me think about it.
of
Yeah,
retracting that data? You can't then like
well,
unpublish that, can you?
yeah.
that's exactly right. And I think you're right, Anthony. And it depends on what sort of version of, let's use ChatGPT. Are you using the free version, the public version? Have you paid for a subscription? That all then changes who has access to your data, where that potentially goes. Because if you're using the free version, you're putting in essentially, proprietary or confidential information. It's actually shared with everyone because it's learning from that. That's how the module is learning.
Yeah,
So the LLM is learning. So you've got to be really careful about and doing the right security checks and compliance checks and verification before actually using one at an enterprise level.
yeah. And I just thought of it now, Stephen, actually, is that we obviously in payroll we print out lots of reports. We can print them to printers traditionally. We also can print them to PDF, which is obviously, more mobile and email friendly and things like that. But then if you're opening that PDF in something that somehow or another is then attached to an AI tool of some sort, you don't like I said, Adobe has AI in it. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've got your payroll report of your whole business now farmed into some AI
Yeah.
engine.
So maybe let me just wrap this section up a little bit on, and again, maybe we've really covered this off, but you're a payroll person, right? You're hearing about this Evo thing. You've obviously just, hopefully not spooked people, but you've kind of mentioned a couple of things. It's coming. I mean, let's be honest, right? This thing is coming whether we like it or not, right? It's a tsunami, right? It's coming, right? We just need to control it. And what confidence do you think around the use of AI for payroll level? What are the things you think you would be at top of mind for you to make sure you're confident?
And I think the thing is that you've not at my level. I obviously come from the payroll lens. I wouldn't know how to certify a product, right? So that's not my skill. But what I would be looking for is either support from someone like a Rolf in your business, but then also for an accredited product, right? So that's the first thing you'd be doing. So each business is going to behave around these things slightly differently. They might have a testing process or an accreditation process or something. But what we can provide on our side and what we have done is gone down the path of actually putting, I guess, the rubber stamp on the product on the Evo product that we're providing, that it's a secure. And the way we've done that is that we've gone through an ISO accreditation. And I'm not sure what was involved in that. Rolf can give more color to that, but I know that our Evo product now has an ISO accreditation, which is globally recognized, Rolf?
It is, yeah. It's 42,001, ISO 42,001.
Right.
For responsible AI.
So from a payroll lens, I can turn around and think to myself that if I'm using something that has a global accreditation like that I can get some security over that, or feel a bit secure that I'm using something that is secure.
Excellent. Thanks, Anthony. Okay, so now we're just going to, let's switch, we won't switch gears, as they say, but what we might do is kind of just go into this, IT world. You can drive the slides, I think, at the top there, mate, if you want, cool. Rolf. But I will start off with saying, what are the most significant security risks introduced by AI in payroll and HR systems? And how should IT teams assess and mitigate those? So this is obviously a map of what we've done, and maybe this is a good jumping off point.
Definitely. So I think if I think of it from the lens around risks around using AI, I mean, as Anthony said earlier, and I think as we all know, there's thousands and thousands of AI products out there, and there's new ones coming every week. There's now the rise of the AI agents. I actually built one during the week, so you can literally go onto an AI platform and get it to write you some code around something that you want to do. But the key, again, is, as I said, is that's great that you built that, but where is all that data going? Who's got access to that? Where are you building it, and where are you storing it? So then you need to go through rigorous compliance and checks and balances. And I sometimes get called the fun police because everyone wants to go and have fun with the new AI tools, and I'm the one walking around going, no, you can't do that, or we have to restrict it at the firewall level. So again, we don't have leakage of data. But the key is there's lots of really good ones out there. You've got to do the assessments. You really need to understand where is your data going, who's got your data, who can use your data. But as you integrate it into your actual systems as well, you want to know is, what's the uptime, what's the support model, how do I do user access so I can manage that? Is the data actually encrypted? And then the next thing to think about is the actual output correct? Have I got a system in place to verify the answers that I'm getting against what I would normally get, to make sure that I haven't made a significant, the AI hasn't understood it differently. Like, I put a data set through Copilot the other day, Microsoft Copilot, and what it gave me versus the reality were different. So I knew the answer I was expecting, but the way that it gave me a different answer. Had all the right data in there, but it was the wrong answer. So I think that's there's sort of the key three things. And if we look at sort of what's up on the board or up on the screen, this is how we've sort of built our AI platform to link in with our, obviously our MicrOpay platform. So we've got on-premise solutions, we've got cloud native solutions, we have our data centers as well. And we need to layer all of the compliance and security on top of that. So we've got ISO 42001, but that also sits on top of our ISO 27001 certification for data security and privacy. And then we've got, as you kind of walk through here, and I talked about encryption before, all these different authentication points, these different platforms are all sitting inside a secure perimeter, which is then all securely locked, is all securely hosted in Australia. So we also geofence a lot of this as well, because we need to make sure that we're meeting the compliance regulations that we have.
Excellent. All right, so let's go down a layer and let's talk about the access group, and particularly around things like our AI model. So how does our AI model ensure that the algorithms are free from vulnerabilities? We talked about that earlier, such as data leakage, bias and manipulation. So you've covered on a couple of things, but maybe let's just,
that's a good point. We'll dig right into that. So our AI models are all using OpenAI, so they're with Microsoft Copilot. So number one tick, we're using an enterprise grade LLM. The way that we do our development follows our strict secure coding development life cycle. So we're doing checks with things like SonarQube and so on to look for vulnerabilities and scan and push the code out. We've then gone through the ISO 42001 accreditation.
You're going to remember that one day, mate.
I've got to remember that. Well, the problem is, right, I get that mixed up with ISO 27001.
I know. I'm the same.
I wish they would make it smaller. And then you can go start talking about...
How many zeros is that again?
How many zeros? Yeah, probably too many zeros in there.
When he turns his own alarm off, he's like, "Which number?" 40.
Yeah, exactly.
Turn the wrong thing on. That's But really, what does that actually mean? So, if you read the definition of it, it's around that we've got a proper a verified framework by industry for artificial intelligence and management systems. But what it really means is that we've gone through a process of we've had our data protection and our encryption verified, our data isolation verified. So we're using multi-tenant platforms, but those tenants are secure. So we don't see data leakage between tenants. That's been verified. We've got our wonderful data as residency and sovereignty. So at the data that we have, and it's been verified, our MicrOpay Evo data all sits in Australia, and it sits between either our access managed data centers in Australia, Microsoft Azure, or AWS, or within Australia. So that's all been verified. That's really important. And then we look at identity access management. So we've got the right tools in place. We've got multi-factor authentication. We're starting to look at, especially in the MicrOpay world, how bringing single sign-on into that in integration, which I know a lot of people are looking for. Yeah. That is probably the key tenets around the AI model, or the AI certification that we've gone through. Of course, obviously layered on top of the ISO 27001. It's a lot of work and a lot of documentation.
So just on the documentation, we've had a question in the chat saying that our IT are reviewing the security for Evo. What documents can I give them from the access group that confirms the ISO 42001
So
certification?
that's a great question. So we can give you the certificate.
Okay.
So we can give you the certificate to say it's been verified, who it's been verified, and then when our next surveillance audit will be.
Yeah. So
I think
if
we
I
have
And that's a good point, Anthony. Actually, these are not a one and done situation either. So it's not like, oh, we've got a certificate. Well, we have to do a yearly surveillance audit to demonstrate that we are continuing to improve our posture around the requirements for that certification. And that's, again, independently assessed.
how many grey hairs does that give you, that process?
Lots.
He's still smiling though. Look at him.
You've got to smile. I
He's
mean,
still
it is what it is. It's all part of the fun, but it's got to be done right, because we want, if we don't do it, then to the earlier points that we've raised, our customers don't have confidence. How can they have confidence in our platform that their data isn't going to being shipped offshore, especially because it's payroll data. There's ATO requirements around that. So we do this and we get the grey hairs and spend, out months and months of paperwork purely so that we can give our customers the confidence that we are doing all the right things. So
this is kind of like the James Hardy stamp of approval on a nice bottle of wine. It gives you the approved stamp, right? That's basically from a payroll lens. If you've got that ISO 42001, that's what we're looking for, right?
Yeah, that's what we're looking for. So what that will mean is for, I guess, the IT or the security teams inside companies using our platform is we've done the hard work. So as they're doing their due diligence, we can then provide them with the certificate that demonstrates, okay, we've gone through this process. Here are the controls that we've met. So it speeds up your due diligence process and let us do the hard work.
Yeah.
I think what we really want to do is
we can obviously always jump on the phone as well. A lot of time there's a few questions. So again, we're happy to get on the phone and answer any of the questions that you might have.
We can put them in an FAQ too, right?
Yeah, we can do that too.
Yeah. And it's interesting, what we want to foster, and speaking about this since we started this journey, is that the payroll people get on with the work they need to do. They don't keep thinking about, the security aspects, right? Hopefully we can take some of that off the table for them. I think the next slide in here, and you can just move forward. You talk a little bit about that, right? So there's something about what it is and so forth, but we can provide a fact sheet as Rolf said, and the certificate is required. So I think we're one of the first ones to get this around AI as well, if I'm not mistaken.
We are, I think, one of the first in Australia to have gone through the process and essentially meet the criteria.
Yeah, need pretty smart people on this one.
We've never, obviously it's a new standard, right? So 42001. How long? You might not know this, but how long has that been around for? It's not an ISO 27. We all know 27001. We all say it like we know what it means anyway. To be honest, I don't. But I've never heard of 40. Prior to a couple of weeks ago, we'd never heard of 42001.
Yeah, this is it's all emerging, right? And so I think this is relatively new. But as we're seeing everything in the whole AI world, it's moving faster than we've ever seen it before.
Yeah.
So there'll be. I wouldn't mind betting within the next 12 months. This standard will be bolstered as we learn more about AI. AI continues to change, especially as we get into like agentic AI and with, there's the rise of more AI bots and so on. There will need to be more controls and checks and balances in place.
Yeah. So it's important to have the right people, I guess, supporting you, obviously from a payroll supplier perspective. Look, one last question for you, mate, just going down into the next level, is, what specific controls are in place to restrict access, monitor behavior, and ensure transparency where AI interacts with that sensitive payroll data?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the key one is around, as mentioned before, is tenant segregation. So everything is isolated. So it's not one big pile of data. It's every customer's data is in their own tenant and fully segregated with their own identity access management layer on top of that, and then using multi-factor to get in there. We then, going a layer down, it's all around data encryption. So we encrypt the data at rest we encrypt it at transit, and then it's encrypted while it's being processed as well, which is really important, especially if you're using, shared GPUs and shared infrastructure. We then geofence everything, so we don't let data bleed outside of our perimeter, or our Australian perimeter, I should say. So internally, as you're doing things, we only allow the products itself and the infrastructure to use local Australian assets, and that's right across our DCs and across AWS and Azure. I think they're really the key controls. And then again, if we look at it from a management layer, while we manage the platform, we don't actually have access inside of the platform, if that makes sense. So our management team are very much focused around making our operations team, the infrastructure is running, it's healthy, we're patching it, we're putting all the right security patches and making sure they're managing vulnerabilities and so on. But we don't actually see what's in the data because it's encrypted.
Yeah, we've mentioned that a number of times. Even we don't see what questions you're asking and things like that, right? So, that's the layer we go to make sure
we can count the token being used, but we have absolutely no idea what questions you're asking it.
Yeah. Now I'm going to pretend I'm technical, and I'm definitely not, right? But I think how many layers of security breach? I think there's 9 or something, and I think one of the ones was humans. Like, I can literally take a thumb drive and do something, but we've even stopped that from happening.
We can't do that. So we actually restrict. So if you put a thumb drive into an Access laptop, it gets encrypted.
I know, it's painful.
Yeah.
I know. I get lots of complaints about that.
And then I can't
we
remember
had some complaints about people restricting stuff. So what we did was, okay, we won't restrict the thumb drives, but if you plug one in, we'll encrypt it with our own keys. So people have stopped putting their thumb drives in.
Yeah.
Which means if you take it out, it's completely useless plugging it into any other device.
Yeah.
Anything else? Those are my main questions. Anthony, have you got any other questions?
No, I think the thing that dawned on me was the incidental use of AI, like when you don't even realize you're using it, right? That's the thing and it's like we saw it yesterday in our own support desk. We've got an AI agent that's in the support desk. Now, obviously, it goes through the same security controls and things like that. So it's a safe use of it. But then the whole thing of even just a PDF, you could have a PDF somewhere and you're using some tool to read or open or to print or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that these tools are not safe, but I mean, Rolf, you might know, but these all of a sudden you've got exposure to AI incidentally without you even knowing it. Like it's not, and it's not and it wasn't that you intended to use it. Like,
it just pops up. It's just enabled. I mean, we're even seeing it in some of our management platforms. Our virtualization platform now has AI in there.
Yeah.
So then we go through the whole motions. Obviously, that all sits inside our perimeter, but it's now incidentally popping up everywhere.
Yeah. So I think that's that's the thing that's probably was my penny drop moment, I suppose, is that you're not necessarily always sure that you're using an AI tool, even when you think you're not using AI. Like you're like, I'm not an AI user. I don't use Chat GPT. Yeah, but you use all these other tools, and they're all powered by AI.
Well, even using Google now, Google has AI built into it, so it'll give you the AI answer first before it actually gives you all the other answers.
Yeah,
and wants you to interact with it, right? So that it learns. Yeah. So, all right. Look, we've actually hit time. It's been such a good session. Thank you so much. There's so much value. I will create the videos on this. I'll put them onto the page so you can share them. And then, like I said, we will have the documentation as well. So you can get your account manager, or you can, have access to that documentation, the fact sheets and things like that. Again, we want to empower you to be able to have the information you can pass on to your IT people, have those conversations so that you're not bearing the responsibility of this because, we're not technical people. I'm certainly not. I don't think Anthony is from a payroll perspective. We got one guy in here, but the rest of us, I say, it just, getting on with the job, right? It's our daily job. We need people to help us and make sure that it's secure and safe. So